WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Indy Softwater, performing service and repairs on over 30 brands of water systems, plus iron and well filtration systems for residential and commercial properties. Includes water tests conducted on-site, providing real-time information about the water quality. The softest, cleanest water begins with Indy Softwater. More at indysoftwater.com.
WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.
We're going to take a trip right now. Like we always do about this time.
This is a journey into sound. Break it down.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. Up first, on this week's show, I'll speak with the rock and roll legend Todd Rundgren. He'll be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Old National Center. And on the second half of the broadcast, I'll be joined by the prolific jazz vocalist Nnenna Freelon. She'll be at the Jazz Kitchen on April 18th. Todd Rundgren is a pioneering musician, songwriter, and producer, known for his eclectic style and innovative approach to technology and music. He rose to fame in the late 1960s with the band Nazz, and he gained widespread acclaim with his 1972 solo album, Something Anything, which included the hit singles Hello, It's Me and I Saw the Light. In addition to his solo career, Todd Rundgren led the progressive rock band Utopia. He's also a sought-after producer, working on landmark albums by the New York Dolls, Hall & Oates, XTC, Meatloaf, the Psychedelic Furs, and Patti Smith. Todd Rundgren's genre-defying work spans rock, pop, and soul, and he's been recognized as a visionary for his early adoption of music videos and interactive media.
I was born to synthesize, energize and catalyze. I was born to synthesize.
But his latest project looks into the past. Todd Rundgren will be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th as part of What the World Needs Now, a tour celebrating the late songwriter Burt Bacharach. Todd Rundgren will join me in a moment. But first, let's hear his classic 1972 recording, Hello, It's Me.
But something's wrong. There's something here that doesn't last too long.
That was Todd Rundgren with Hello, It's Me. He'll be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Old National Center as part of the Burt Bacharach Songbook Live. I recently spoke with Todd Rundgren. We discussed his work as a producer and his interest in the music of Burt Bacharach. Let's join our conversation. Todd, you'll be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Old National Center. The tour is titled What the World Needs Now, the Burt Bacharach Songbook Live. Thank you so much for taking time to join me. I'm a huge fan.
Great. It's my pleasure.
Before we talk about Burt Bacharach, I'd like to ask you about your work as a producer. I do a lot of research around the music history of Indiana, and I think our listeners here in Indianapolis will be very interested to hear about this. In 1976, you produced 3 tracks for the debut album by Roadmaster, a legendary rock band here in the city. I know you've produced dozens of albums. but I'm curious if you have any memories of working with Roadmaster.
Well, I do. It was Roadmaster at the time included the mighty Adam Smasher, if you recall, who went on to be a DJ, I think, in Washington, D.C., and then other places after that. But he was quite a personality. I remember we were playing somewhere in the Indianapolis area, somewhere in Indiana, and went to see the band, and I thought that they were really good. They were rocking, and they had their own kind of slant on things. So arranged for them to come to Bearsville to do a little bit of recording. And at the time, I'm not even sure whether they had a label deal. I think they were doing an album on spec at that point, and then they found somebody afterwards to put the record out. But it was pretty quick and easy. I mean, they knew they had played live a lot, so that's always an advantage. If the actors played the material for people, then it's easier to perform it in the studio. You're not so self-conscious. So we got a pretty good live sound out of them. Had a lot of fun with the guys, and I see some of the guys from the group every once in a while when I'm coming through the Midwest. So, and my recollection it was a pleasant experience.
Well, when I'm feeling let down from all them lonely towns, I come to you to get me by. Right there to please me, acting like you're glad to see me whenever I might find the time. Let me tell you, I want to talk about a magic feeling. Let me tell you about a magic feeling.
The album was released on a local label here called Village Records. In a 1976 interview with the Indianapolis News, Adam Smasher said, "You produced everything for free for the group." Was that typical of you during that time to help out up-and-coming groups that you took a liking to?
Yeah, if I thought they deserved some attention and they didn't have a record deal or anything like that. Since I had my own studio, it didn't really cost me anything to have them come in and record some songs. It might have, if we had done a whole album, it might have cost me more time. But as I say, they were pretty well rehearsed, so it didn't eat up a lot of time, and so it was no skin off of my nose.
I kept waiting on the come around. You just ran it in the ground. Why'd you have to be that way? Now there's nothing left to say. You would have said it, baby. So long since we've been on. Been a mighty long time. Time to find another. My time is coming gone. Been so long since we've been on. Been so long. Now our trouble's coming gone.
One more quick question about your work as a producer. The vocalist David Johansen just passed away. David was the frontman for the New York Dolls. You produced 2 records for the group, including their 1973 debut album, which became a very influential record amongst punk and metal bands. From what I've read, you had mixed feelings about the New York Dolls' music. Any thoughts you want to share on the band or David Johansen in the aftermath of his passing?
Well, David was in some ways the most musical of the members of the Dolls, because he was able to step outside of that role and do other things. His Buster Poindexter thing, of course, and in the later years, he was an interpreter of blues material, and a lot of the archive material from like Harry Smith's field recordings, that sort of thing. So he became something of a musicologist later in life. He was educating his audience into rare rare instances of music. And so he was more than just, the guy who was trying to be Mick Jagger in the beginning. The Dolls were kind of like, when I originally saw them, they were kind of stuck in this phase of the Rolling Stones. People think that they were sort of fought out very well the image that they wanted to create, but it was pretty much cut from the Rolling Stones when the Rolling Stones were in their drag era. And so, I mean, you remember the Dolls' first cover, they're all in drag. So there was no implications that anybody in the band was gay. It was just a weird thing that they seemed to latch on to about the Rolling Stones. So, and they might have sounded a bit more like the Rolling Stones if they had the same if everyone in the band had the same sort of musical devotion. But for some of them, it was more like, it's the lifestyle and kind of like the style, the posing. Is like Johnny Thunder's big hair. It had nothing to do with his guitar playing, but he always had his hair up as big as possible. So it was it was an interesting experience. Had its challenges, most of which were trying to get the band all in the same room to do a take together, because there were so many groupies and drug dealers and everybody all around the time.
Well, we can't take her this way, and her friends are one another's spray. Hoping for a better day to hear what she's got to say about that personality crisis. You got it while it was hot, but now frustration, heartache is what you got.
And Todd, as I mentioned, you're bringing the Burt Bacharach Songbook Tour to Indianapolis on April 18th. I understand it was Dionne Warwick's 1964 recording of Walk On By that first hooked you on the music of Burt Bacharach. It is a captivating piece of music. Can you tell us what first drew you into Burt Bacharach's music?
Burt Bacharach was not a household name at the time that Walk On By came out. But because he had so closely aligned himself with Dionne Warwick, he wrote everything and produced everything on her, and did all the arrangements on her early records. And so he kind of found at that particular point, he kind of found his voice. He's not like a singer, but he found the ultimate interpreter of his material. And so that's how I became aware, and I think other people became aware when they bought the Dionne Warwick album, and then they saw Burt Bacharach had written everything and had scored everything and produced the record. Then you suddenly realize, wow, this guy has a style of his own, an approach of his own, this really lush orchestrations and a somewhat different harmonic sense. He could easily go from major to minor and back again, and the major minor seventh chords that he used a lot of, and various suspensions. But also sometimes we don't give credit enough to Hal David, who wrote the lyrics, and it was that marriage of the two, I think, that made it so successful.
I just can't get over losing you, and so if I see you broken and blue, walk on by, walk on by. Foolish pride, that's all that I have left, so let me hide the tears and the sadness you gave me when you said goodbye.
But when I got involved in this project, I was unaware of the songs that he had written before started doing the Dionne Warwick stuff that he'd written for like Chuck Jackson and other R&B acts. So he was a fairly successful R&B songwriter before Walk On By, but I didn't know that, even though I had heard the material. I was listening to the radio, and I remember Any Day Now by Chuck Jackson was a great song, and he did, he worked with all different kinds of groups. We associate him so much with Dionne Warwick, we don't realize that he worked with the Shirelles, and Chuck Jackson, all these R&B acts. So there was a lot to discover even after, I got, way into that Dionne Warwick album initially.
Any day now, I will hear you say goodbye, my love, and you'll be on your way. Then my wild, beautiful bird, you will have flown. Oh, any day now, I'll be all alone.
Todd, as I stated earlier, I do a lot of programs on the history of music in Indiana, and I did want to mention that Burt Bacharach credited Gary, Indiana's Calvin Carter with giving him his first big break in the record industry. Calvin was the A&R man for VJ Records, a label founded in Gary, Indiana in 1953 by his sister Vivian Carter. In 1963, the VJ artist Jerry Butler recorded the Burt Bacharach song Make It Easy on Yourself, and Calvin brought Burt into the studio to arrange and produce that session. As you mentioned, he got a huge boost from R&B singers. The Drifters recorded his music, the Shirelles, Chuck Jackson, Gene McDaniels. But there is another very different side to his early work in music. He'd studied classical music with Darius Milhaud and Henry Cowell. He toured as a arranger with Marlene Dietrich. I would imagine he had a lot of depth and range as a composer to exist in these different musical worlds. When you're performing his music, do you hear that depth and richness in these songs?
Yeah, well, he had a penchant for doing things a little bit differently, like adding an extra bar, or even a couple of extra beats into a verse so they could make it sort of linger for a moment in a certain place, whereas in most composition, it's very formal, verse, chorus, and they're all, 8 bars, 12 bars, something like that. It's very like 6 bars and 2 beats, it's like the Burt Bacharach way of doing things. And it's not surprising, that he, was studied with and absorbed the influence of Darius Milhaud, because Milhaud was kind of like a Dadaist composer. He was like, what are the rules? I'm going to break them. What are people expecting to hear? When they expect to hear that, I'm going to do something else. And I think that was just, even though the music of Burt Bacharach is not as strange to the ear as that of Darius Milhaud, he absorbed that kind of slightly oddball thing, of confounding your expectations. You expect something to happen, but something different happens. And that's what makes the music more interesting.
Todd, the tour is titled What the World Needs Now, and I saw a video of you performing that song on YouTube. During your introduction to the song, you commented on the chaotic state of the world right now. At this moment in time, when many people are feeling depressed and confused about the state of things, what does it mean to you to be performing that song in the songbook of Burt Bacharach to audiences around the country? Is there any meaning there for you?
Well, it's the one thing about it is that people just really do respond to the material. I don't know to what degree they respond to specific performance of it, but it's one of those things where you're suddenly reminded, oh, there's another Burt Bacharach song that I know. There's another one that I know. And if people were asked to list them, they might come up with, 3 or 4, do you know the way to San Jose, or some of the more familiar songs. But when you perform them all back to back, I think one of the things that impresses the audience is the depth of the catalog, how much they know about Burt Bacharach's music already that they didn't expect to know. And so that's kind of like an advantage that we have, the familiarity of the material. But, I'm doing a lot of the more depressing stuff, and that's another thing that you don't realize until you put the songs all together, how much heartbreak there is, from song to song. It's either, you can't get this other person to love you, or you've gotten them to say they love you, but they're always messing around with somebody else. So I have the responsibility of taking on a lot of these songs, and I get the impression sometimes that by the time I'm come on for my 4th song, that the audience is almost automatically depressed because they know it's going to be one of these heartbreakers again. So I went to some, trouble to ensure that I got to do some of the funner stuff as well. I get to do What's New Pussycat and Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, just to kind of lighten up the rain cloud that's over everything else that I do.
Todd, you'll be performing the music of Burt Bacharach in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Old National Center. You're touring with Rob Shirik-Bari, who was a music director for Dionne Warwick and Burt Bacharach. Any final thoughts you want to share about this tour before we go?
Well, it's fairly definitive at this point. We've got 6 singers, 6 featured singers, 3 girls and 3 boys, and so you won't get bored listening to the same person over and over again. Attempting to, somehow convey the range of all this material. So we've got Wendy Moten, who sounds a bit like Dionne, and then we've got Tori Holm, who sounds like Karen Carpenter. So I don't sound like Chuck Jackson, but I like to sing the songs anyway. So that's part of the appeal of it. It isn't, even though I happen to be featured, that's because my name is more familiar than a lot of the other people in the cast. But I think the audience soon discovers, there's a lot more than just listening to me sing really sad songs.
Todd, thank you for taking a few minutes to speak with me today. It's an honor to have you on the program. I'm a huge fan and look forward to this show in Indianapolis.
Terrific. We'll see you in Indy.
We've been listening to my recent conversation with Todd Rundgren. He'll be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Old National Center. Let's hear one more classic track from Todd Rundgren. From 1978, this is Can We Still Be Friends?
We can't play this game anymore, but can we still be friends? Things just can't go on like before, but can we still be friends? We had something to learn. Now it's time for the wheel to turn.
Cultural Manifesto will return after this short break.
WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. Up next, I'll speak with Nnenna Freelon, a prolific jazz vocalist whose career spans over 3 decades. She'll be performing at the Jazz Kitchen on April 18th.
No news is good news on TV tonight. Worst case scenario has finally come to light.
Born in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1954, Nnenna Freelon began singing in church and community settings before launching her professional music career in her late 30s. Her debut album was released in 1992 on Columbia Records, marking the start of an accomplished recording career.
Tried to think that love is not around. Still, it's uncomfortably near. My old heart ain't gaining any ground because my angel eyes ain't here.
Freelon has collaborated with numerous jazz luminaries, including Ray Charles, Ellis Marsalis, Kenny Barron, Pat Metheny, Christian McBride, and Herbie Hancock. Freelon's music has attracted significant recognition, including 7 Grammy nominations. Let's join my conversation with Nnenna Freelon. Miss Freelon, you'll be performing at the Jazz Kitchen on Friday, April 18th. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I'm looking forward to coming on this Friday.
And Ms. Freelon, if you don't mind, I want to ask a question about your early years in the music industry. I'm a massive fan of Yusef Lateef, a legendary Detroit jazz musician known for playing many different instruments and incorporating musical ideas from around the world into his work. You've referred to Yusef Lateef as a mentor, and I believe the first major recording you appeared on was Yusef Lateef's 1991 album, Encounters. Can you tell me about your connection to Yusef Lateef and, the work you did with him?
Oh, great. Yes, thank you for... He's an ancestor now, and was such a great friend and mentor and teacher. I met him at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst and studied with him privately, studied improvisation with him. And it was a very philosophical journey that we took. Yes, we played some music. Yes, we talked about scalar ideas, and he wrote this beautiful book called The Repository of Scales. And there were Egyptian scales and Japanese scales and major, minor, melodic scale, just all of these ideas. And he felt like each scale was like a little universe where you could get all kinds of really interesting improvisational ideas just from practicing the scales. And there were things that he shared with me that went deeper than any kind of technical or theoretical knowledge. He said, always speak through your instrument, but what you say should come through your heart. And I think you can hear those words, speak from your heart, but not really understand them until you have lived through, some disappointments, some challenges, some loves, some highs, some lows. And at this moment in my life, his words resonate so loudly and so beautifully.
That's incredible. I can't imagine a more mind-opening teacher than Yusef Lateef. That must have been an incredible experience.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And as you see, he's continuing to teach, even from the other side of the veil. That's what really great teachers do. Their words stick with you, and you carry them forward. And so in some sense, they don't ever die.
His music often veered into the avant-garde, the experimental. The two albums you recorded with him, Encounters and Heart Vision, are different than the music you're known for making. I'm curious just what your thoughts are on that music today, and how did you approach it at the time? Did it seem different for you?
Well, here is an example of a mentor of yours saying, I would like you to, record with me. So that right there is a bone-shattering, awesome. It was like me? But he heard something in me. He chose my instrument like he would choose a flute that he wanted to play, right? Whatever it was I was holding in the voice, that's what he wanted for his recording project. And it wasn't me, Nnenna Freelon, and all my experience, because I didn't have any at the time. There was something inside the tone that he wanted. So, and they didn't really know what to do with this music at the time. They called it, what did they call it?
New Age?
New Age.
Yeah.
Which, what is that anyway? He was an ethnomusicologist. He was a free-thinking human who was always in search of the next idea. Even into his later years, always in search of the next idea. So that part of his legacy continues with everyone whose life he touched, including mine, always in search of the next idea.
It's the wind and the water. It's the wind and the rain. How many times have I seen the rain falling, wind and the water?
You have a beautiful new album out titled Beneath the Skin. This is your 14th album, and it's a unique release among your body of work. This is the first album you've created that focuses on your original compositions. You've done tributes to Stevie Wonder, Billie Holiday in the past. You always have amazing interpretations of standards on your albums. Can you tell us about Beneath the Skin and why you decided to turn to your own compositions for this recording?
Wow. What a great question. Thank you for asking. We as jazz singers are very invested in the standards. I mean, we just love the standards. I'm not any different in that regard. I love standards. I love reinterpreting, reimagining them. This was an opportunity to dig deep beneath what stories that I had to tell, stories that were in my heart. So I wrote in collaboration in some instances with Alan Pasqua. We co-wrote the tune Black Iris. With Bill O'Connell, we co-wrote Journey of the Heart. But all of the stories are pages from my life. And I just really felt that this was the record I had to do at this point.
Blossom of the Nile, I dream of you and smile. Velvet elegance, intoxicating scent, black iris in bloom.
I'm going to share some music from the record. One song that really intrigued me is Widow Song. It's a very haunting recording. Anything you'd want to share with our listeners about that piece?
Oh, sure. So I became a widow in 2019. My husband of 40 years, almost 40 years, passed away from ALS in 2019. And it has really been a journey. It's been a journey of self-discovery. It's been a journey of grief and sorrow, but it's also been a journey of joy and a journey of questions. So in that song, Widow Song, I'm actually asking the universe, must I be this thing? Must I become this new being? And there are lots of question songs out there that are just, the story is based on a question. You ask the universe, you ask yourself, you ask your beloved. And this is me throwing a question out to the universe of, must my heart a widow be? I don't have the answer, but I am asking the question.
Let's take a break from my conversation with Nnenna Freelon and listen to Widow Song off her new album, Beneath the Skin.
Must my heart a widow be? Widow song is never free. To have and hold my love for thee. Must my heart a widow be?
That was Nnenna Freelon with Widow Song off her new album, Beneath the Skin. Nnenna Freelon will be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Jazz Kitchen. Let's return to our conversation. Ms. Freelon, I want to ask about a very different project you recorded. I grew up with hip-hop music, and one of my all-time favorite artists was Mos Def, currently known as Yasin Bey. In 2010, you recorded a version of his song, Umi Says. That song appeared on an album titled Freedom Suite by The Beast. I believe this is a group featuring your son, Pierce.
Yes.
I love your interpretation of that song. It brought out a very different, it just took it in a whole different direction from the original. Any thoughts you want to share about recording Umi Says? Were you familiar with that song before you took it on with The Beast?
I was familiar with it, but I didn't see myself singing it, honestly. Mos Def's version was like the definitive, that was the version. And so when my son and his compadre said, yeah, we want to do a cover of Mos Def's Umi Says, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I can get my toe in that jam. But they encouraged me and was like, no, you do you. You know, you don't have to do it like that. You do you. And it was so much fun recording with these young people, recording with my child was just awe-inspiring and heart-opening. And I've continued to work with all those gentlemen, but in 2022, was it 2022? My son and I did a record together called Ancestors. And that was a blast, recording in a different way. You know, we go into a studio, jazz musicians, we play a couple of versions and we pick in live time, and we pick our favorite one, clean up stuff if we need to. But they record in pieces with tracks. So you get a track and then you do your part and they smush it all together some kind of magical way. So it was totally a different recording process. I totally dug it. It was great.
I remember that recording got a lot of attention at the time. Did you ever hear from Yasin Bey? Did he ever send word of his thoughts on it?
I don't know. Not to me, personally, but maybe to those, young people. They hit each other up on social media. It's like a thing.
Yeah.
So you could have hit them up and said, "Yo, it's cool," and I would never know because I'm not a social media queen.
Yeah, understood. This is Nnenna Freelon in The Beast with Umi Says.
My Umi says, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My Abi says, shine your light on the
That was Nnenna Freelon in The Beast performing Umi Says. Nnenna Freelon will be performing in Indianapolis on April 18th at the Jazz Kitchen. Let's return to our conversation. Miss Freelon, you've had so many extraordinary moments in your career. Before we go, there was one concert you performed that I wanted to ask you about. I find this really fascinating. You appeared on a 1996 television program titled A Celebration of America's Music, which aired on ABC. And during this program, you performed alongside some of the greatest legends in American music. You did a version of Thelonious Monk's Round Midnight in a group that featured Herbie Hancock, Pat Metheny, Christian McBride, and Thelonious Monk's son, T.S. Monk.
It begins to tell round midnight, I do pretty well till after sundown. Supper time, I'm feeling sad.
And in that same program, you also sang Mac the Knife alongside Aretha Franklin, George Benson, Al Jarreau, and many other music luminaries. I know there were many guests of honor in the audience, including the late civil rights activist Rosa Parks, I believe. This just sounds like something out of a dream. Did it feel that way to you? Any reflections you have on that performance?
Yes, it was something out of a dream. It was it was just one of those moments that you scratch your head and say, did that really just happen? I mean, was that really, really true that I was on a stage with Aretha Franklin and we actually became friends and, we emailed each other. She liked to write notes. She would write notes when I had a record to come out, and I would write to her, and she was just a lovely touch point in my life as a result of that ABC show. I don't really usually go back and look at things I've done, especially high vibrational moments like that, because they make me nervous. Mm-hmm. But it is a moment in time that I cherish. I really cherish and am just very grateful for.
For the shark hands protecting dear and show them red and white, just a jackknife has a woman and he's dead, and it keeps it out of sight.
When the shark bites with his teeth.
Finally, Miss Freelon, you'll be performing in Indianapolis at the Jazz Kitchen on April 18th. Anything you want to say about that show or any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners?
Oh, thank you. I'm just really excited about coming to Indianapolis. I've played the Jazz Kitchen before. It's been many, many years. And so I'm glad to be returning. I have new music. I have a great desire to be in community. We've spent a long time away from each other, and I have missed my audience. I have missed performing live. I've been doing recordings. I've done Zoom stuff. I mean, all other kinds of virtual things. Nothing replaces a live circle of the music. So I just hope people come out. I'm getting on a plane. I'm coming all the way to Indianapolis. I hope I'm not singing to an empty house. So I just hope people come out. We're going to have a good time.
Ms. Freelon, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to speak with me today. Again, I'm a huge fan of your work, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kyle. Take care.
You too. See you in Indianapolis. That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you to my guests, Todd Rundgren and Nnenna Freelon. Check out the Cultural Manifesto podcast at WFYI.org or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cultural Manifesto is hosted and produced by me, Kyle Long. Thank you for listening.
The forest testifies eyes in shades of green. I see him play softly by a stream. The willow tree, the sycamore are silent.
WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington, Indiana, where Hoagie Carmichael, Booker T. Jones, and John Mellencamp impacted the city and helped it become a music destination. Bloomington is home to a variety of musical artists, live music venues, and hundreds of annual music events. More information at musicbloomington.com.